Hey there, Banditos. Welcome to the latest episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits, where, as always, we fling open the doors of your local comic book shop and bring you interviews with your favorite comic book creators of yesterday and today. And today is no different. However, it is just I. It's just a Just Joe episode. The other two guys aren't here, so that means I get the keys to the castle. And in doing so, I'm bringing you an interview with a fabulous guest, someone who's worked on some amazing work. He's had the pleasure of working on some freelancing titles at DC, such as Sgt Rock, Talent Showcase, and Elvira's House of Mystery. He's also a Kubert School alum and teacher, and I must say he's quite the Bigfoot enthusiast. We're talking about none other than Darren Auck. Like I said, he's worked on some great stuff over his career. He's even moved on to the Marvel Bullpen for a period of time. And he's worked on some great Ren and Stimpy based IP for Marvel as well. So without further ado, what do you say we get to the interview? This is Darren Auck. We are thrilled to be talking to none other than Darren Auck. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Anyone who's got a figure collection as big, if not bigger than mine, is just I'm dying to talk to. So, I'm going to start off with the same question we ask everyone, and that is, how did you first discover comic books?
I remember from things my mom saved that she probably started picking them up for me when I was 5. And she also kept a lot of the drawings I tried to do from those comics. And apparently there was some little Lulu, but then I think it was a matter of, it had to have been like World's Finest, and then probably like Justice League titles. I was the perfect age. Like I was 6 years old when the Batman TV show came out. So Batman comics, I like the teams. So I would say 5 years old. And with where I was at in my generation, when you started, when you're getting into high school, it was like, oh, I better put away these childish things. But I couldn't give them up. And I just stayed with them as a collector, a fan, and started trying to get my own stuff off the ground when I was in high school. So I had no choice in the matter, man. I don't, I kind of envy those fans that are like, this is the cover that grabbed me on the stand. I don't remember which one it was. I remember Avengers comics with John Buscema. Covers really grabbed me and held on to me. But yeah, I'm a lifer. Yep.
That's awesome. Now, do you still have any of those comics that you first collected?
I do have some. I'm not one of those. I don't have to bore everybody with mom got rid of my comics. She never did that to me. But when I got serious about collecting, I'd go to New York conventions. I did end up putting together a complete run of the first volume of Avengers, but later on I had to sell like the first 10. Some bills caught up to me, but yeah, I still got a ton of long boxes. I've sold and given away a ton of them. I'll probably pick up figures, before I'll pick up comics. But yeah, still loving all this stuff.
Do you still read like whatever is out currently?
Yes, I do. I try to. You know, I was definitely spoiled working in the offices at Marvel because back then you had the comps, you got everything. And so now, if I can't fit it into my budget, we got a really great library system here in Hunterdon County, New Jersey. So I get to catch up on some stuff, the Immortal Hulk stuff, anything by like Sean Phillips, the Criminal series, and on from there. I still like a ton of different genres, you know,
That's great.
and I'm not going to start trying to name these titles or creators because my memory stinks, and I always leave out friends, and it gets dramatic. Actually, it
No,
doesn't, but
no, fair enough. We speak to a lot of people um, who have, they're on their, dare I say, the back end of their comics career, and they
Mhm.
don't necessarily read what's out now. And,
Right.
that's totally fine. But I always appreciate people who are kind of still keeping up with it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of great content out there. I mean, I always say that for readers, it's a bit of a renaissance in that there is something quite literally for everyone nowadays.
Yeah, I
You
agree
know,
with you. And even though I'm a veteran, I hate it when uh, professionals or fans are like, "Well, that's not my Captain America," and
yeah,
it's like, are you even checking this stuff out? Because there's like the good stuff is still out there,
yeah, oh yeah,
like. But of course, if you just want to live in the past and complain about whatever, well, do that. If obviously that doesn't work for you, stick with it,
right.
And,
And
but I wish I could. I know there's been a couple titles that are new to me, and I'm having a good time as a reader. And the movies, the shows, you know,
yeah, they keep
I'm with you. I feel like it's a really good time.
they keep making them. I'll keep watching them. That's for
Yeah.
sure. So, at what point in your career, in your early teens, I guess, or late
Mhm.
teens, did you decide, hey, this is going to be my career? I'm going to make this. I'm going to make this a my life.
Um, I was either lucky or just stubborn and defiant. Well, probably all of the above. But I was lucky enough. My folks knew I wanted to pursue this as a career, and for a kid in the '70s, that was kind of a weird thing back then. That's another thing that's been wonderful about the business is it's a little more understood, appreciated. Um, comics got a bad rap for many years, but I'd always made my own, just taking the paper, folding it up and drawing, and then I actually borrowed some money from my dad when I guess I was like a sophomore in high school. And I did my own superhero anthology. A couple of my high school buddies wrote some stuff for it. And I really had no choice in the matter. That's what I had to do. The superhero stuff, the horror stuff was my favorite. And then with I was lucky enough to have like go to that workshop that John Buscema had with Don Heck and some other people on Saturday afternoons in Manhattan when I was like 15. And then, of course, after working a year out of high school, I went to Kubert School. So it was always there. Um, and there's times when whichever creative market um, is yours might, like we started getting work from DC in the early '80s around the time we graduated my class. And then there was like they call it the Disney, the DC implosion, where a lot of
Yeah.
titles bid it. It was just a cycle, and that was tough on us. But I did advertising, caricatures, a little bit of everything, and that keeps it fun. I still try to take on different and new stuff just for myself.
Now, during your time in the Kubert School, you actually were taught by Joe Kubert himself.
Yep.
What was that like, first of all, and what because we've spoken to a lot of people that have gone through there, but I don't know, never really seem to kind of cover that experience.
Okay.
What is that like, and what did he impart to you, during that time?
Oh, well, Joe, best boss, best mentor. I did end up teaching at the school quite a few years after I finished up with Marvel. But Joe, as an instructor, um, I'm no little guy, but Joe was one of them guys. He just seemed like he was 10 feet tall. Not that he was scary. As a matter of fact, he was, he it always amazed me looking back at it that like how good he was at communicating with us stupid punks. Like he was gracious, and it was he was intimidating, but was more out of like you just respected. I think he's on the Mount Rushmore of comic books,
Mm-hmm.
for me anyway. And it was intimidating. I mean, there was a lot of talented people. Jose Delbo, I knew his stuff from DC Comics also. Sal Amendola, um, High Eisman and Milt Neal, all those guys definitely brought the bona fides. But Joe, I mean, it was his school and he was the boss. But it wasn't like I got to do my best because he's looming over me. You did your best because he was just that kind of leader, you know. And the deadlines were tough. They made that a very important aspect of the school to give a student a sense of reality. Um, this ain't no fine art school. We dealt with deadlines, and man, you didn't want to let anybody down if you were a serious student, but man, you didn't want to let Joe down, you know, which really sucked for whoever taught the other class that day, as far as getting stuff out of us. But and as far as just his skill level, I was smart enough to keep some of the overlays he did for us as far as um, just helping us with the process. When it comes to Joe, I would say just the layout to be able to tell a sequential story. And I know that was a very important part of storytelling for him. He was one of those guys, he's like, it doesn't have to be a masterpiece. Tell the story. Do the best art you can, telling the story within the deadline. And one thing I'll also say, I didn't necessarily live it in my own career, but you would never hear Joe or Adam and Andy or any of the Kubert family. They never spoke ill of anyone, in the business. We can gossip and talk shit, but that was not part of their belief system whatsoever. You know, and we were talking about, it's kind of cool. Sometimes you're pleasantly surprised by how you can ask somebody, "Hey, can I be a part of this, or do you want to
Right.
do this interview?" And we had a student that he was a little unusual. He was more interested in being an editor. So he had set it up for one of his final projects to edit an anthology or a pinup book. And he goes, "It's all about the school. I want to get somebody. Um, who do I get to do this cover?" And I said, "It's the school. Go ask Joe. You know where his office is." And of course, the young guy looked at me like, "What are you, freaking out of your mind?" But he went down there and asked him. And oh, what it was the student had done a really nice drawing of the school. And I said, "Well, it'd be nice if you had the human element in there." That was back when we were still using Tor quite a bit for advertising at the school. And he went and asked Joe, and Joe penciled Tor on the cover, and he goes, "You tell Auck he can ink this." So of course I got in on it too. But yeah, he was great. He was like an uncle that wasn't a blood relative.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, at what point do you make your way to DC?
Um, well, being at the Kubert School, Joe was still editing some titles up there, primarily the war books. Sal Amendola, it worked out nice for us because Sal had been an editor there for quite a while, and he had just started like a new talent showcase thing. So we did, some of us got a chance to do some of that stuff. I did like a story for an issue of Elvira's House of Mystery that was like, thinking back, it's like the worst freaking Stephen King ripoff ever. But hey, this was some of my first writing and work. So, but that was like a really nice natural transition. And Joe had also put together a deal with Pacific Comics, which your younger viewers gonna have to look them up because Pacific Comics was a brilliant company that I forget how long they went through the 80s as far as publishing, but some amazing titles. And us students, we were able to do a little bit of stuff like some backup stuff for them. But then, like I said, right after that, things got tight, you know. And I was kind of doing a little bit of everything. And then in 1990, I started working in the Marvel Bullpen. And what that was, a friend of mine was going freelance. He had, gotten enough freelance lined up with editors. He didn't want to come into the office anymore. And here's a good lesson for all you creative types that actually have to deal with other people. If you don't piss people off, sometimes they hook you up with some really good lines on work and assignments. And so my buddy said, "Why don't you go? I'm out, and why don't you go interview?" So that's how I got into Marvel, was being a bullpen letterer.
That's amazing.
So the DC stuff, it wasn't that much, but it definitely was my my I don't know, my fire zone. That's where it got real. You know.
Now, you've worn a number of hats over your career. Is there one that you particularly enjoyed the most, or you really felt,
Uh,
I don't know, dare I say, like, okay, this is where I want to be?
yeah. No, that's a great question. For me, um, I mean, I've enjoyed pretty much all aspects. I mean, I worked as an in-house artist for a greeting card company at one time. I was drawing like bunnies and flowers all day long. And then I would go home and draw like zombies destroying people and Satan traipsing around with naked women just to get like a cosmic balance in my own brain. But The old bullpen days, yeah, now we're talking a lot of nostalgia, but when I started working in the Marvel bullpen for Virginia Ramita in 1990, and I was in there for about 3 years before I just kind of got out and did some freelance for a couple years and then came back. But the bullpen is like where I met so many of my friends, families, fellow fiends. That's way up there. And then, of course, um, I take great pride in the fact that I worked for John Romita Sr. as his assistant art director and was able to work with him and the guy before me, Steve Geiger, and the Romita's Raiders. That was a great time. And then when John he left the office, he kind of retired. I don't think anybody really retires. We might just do something slightly different. But once John was done with the office um, responsibilities, then I became full art director. That was great. Stressful, because you did have some responsibility. Most of what we did was to assist and make the editor's life easier. A lot of art corrections, which we'll get together. I'll tell you some art correction stories. That sometimes that stuff gets pretty weird. Just the nuts and bolts of putting together a large run of monthly comics. I mean, I enjoyed doing like the Nickelodeon stuff as a freelancer in my apartment, but I always look at being in the offices, I think was the best. And also teaching at the Kubert School. It was a really nice balance to work on my stuff and then teach 2, maybe 3 days a week, just to get out of the cave and pretend you know how to talk to other sentient beings. And with the school days, you had that camaraderie, you had the chance to talk shop, um, try to impart some wisdom and some ideas on how to kidnap and blackmail editors, that kind of thing.
I'm glad you mentioned the Nickelodeon stuff because I wanted to ask you from an artistic point of view. You've done many different types of things, styles of art. Is that hard to make that transition or switch? I mean, to go from, I mean, you mentioned like, you're doing, you're drawing like, Satan and whatnot and, at night, which I could totally appreciate from drawing, greeting cards during the day. But from a
Yeah.
professional standpoint, it's like, I compare that to say like a voice actor who has to kind of get into the swing of it
I,
before they hit record.
I
Um,
think that's a sharp comparison because I I really liked, let's keep it real stupid and simple with our labels. I love doing the cartoony stuff and I love doing the serious stuff. Why is it called serious stuff? There's men running around in spandex, but we know what we're talking about,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And but it wasn't another thing that really, probably the biggest like skill benefit I got out of working in the art department was, especially to do corrections, we had to ghost other people's stuff,
Okay.
fix it in their style. We usually used like a patch paper before we were able to put things together digitally later on in the 90s. And I always felt pretty confident with being able to ape other people's styles. Um, it was tricky, and if you're a comic book artist or writer, be careful of this yourself because I was just doing like these silly one. I think Mark Gruenwald was the first one to look at my stuff and go, "You draw funny stuff. You're going to start doing bullpen bulletins or whatever it was." And then I would get to work on some humor stuff. Which pain in the ass title to explain to non-true believers what you're talking about, but that was some fun stuff. The only thing with that was I still had my main I'd say my main goal was like the superheroes, Avengers. That became my all-time favorite book. And some of the editors would be like, "Well, you're the humor guy." Or they would be like, "You're the one doing my lettering corrections in the bullpen. I'm not giving you shit because I don't want you to leave." But you know what? Just you tried to take care of, you took care of your job, and then you reached out a little bit. It was tough for some people to realize that, and most, I think, Kubert folks can do a little bit of everything. And the only part where it was difficult, like let's say shifting gears or getting that different range in your voice. One thing, like when I was doing Ren and Stimpy and Rocco's Modern Life, you're pretty much drawing like other people. You know, I got some really great overlays from John Murray, the first issue of Rocco. He just showed me how to make it move more like his stuff did. And of course, Nickelodeon kept a sharp eye on all that stuff, Ren and Stimpy and Rocco. Not real bad for like a licensed property, but um, that was probably more difficult. It's almost like, okay, this is me drawing Rocco. Now I got to make the shift to make it look like Rocco.
Mm-hmm.
And but as far as changing gears, I don't mind that because like right now I'm doing a big caricature commission with Nickelodeon characters and people with them, and I'm also working on a horror strip right now for our newspaper comic, The Kid in the Comic. So I like mixing it up, but I got to be careful because I'm like squirrel shiny ball because I tell everybody, and it's really not that much of an exaggeration. I have 98 different projects started because I do like to bounce around a little bit.
On a side note, you seem to be into horror. Are
Oh
you?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So am
B
I. So that's why I'm
movies.
asking because I really dig it. And like the old like Tales from the Crypt type
Oh yeah.
comics and things of that. Though I'm a huge fan of those. Not to mention,
Oh cool.
tons of horror movies and
Yeah.
so
I
yeah.
I don't know if you're old enough for Famous Monsters of Filmland, but it was a magazine, Florrie Ackerman, about a lot of the old black and white
Okay.
movies. And, it kind of coined the term monster kid. Like, so that's what I call fans, even if we're long in the tooth kids. But yeah, definitely a monster kid. The Warren comics, eerie and creepy,
Mm-hmm.
I discovered them like when I was 12, 13. So we're talking a perfect connection, you know. You look up from the color titles and go, holy shit, what is that? You know. So yeah, the horror stuff. Um, I still want to do a traditional superhero book, maybe with my own characters. Um, I took on some commissions. A good friend, supporter. I'm drawing some old like Two Gun Kid stuff for him, which you know, mix it up. For me, I think that's fun.
Very cool. Yeah, I've been trying to over the past couple of years or so, like make an effort just to find some of those horror comics. There's a lot of reprints out there, but I want to get some,
Yeah,
older ones. But yeah, they're fun. They're really
yeah,
fun. And just to see like a lot of the horror that's out there now that was inspired by that stuff is really cool
yeah, yeah.
too.
And again, I really should have put together a cheat sheet because there's like, as far as my recommended reading list, like the Black Eyed Kids was a strip that was a really good comic. There's a bunch of them, and I haven't really checked out the stuff that seems to be very similar to the Warren comics, but I'm curious. I like to try to look at a little bit of everything.
So to that point, actually, I know you did a fair amount of commercial work at one point in your career, and what was that experience like for you? I mean, it's a shift from y- from comics, certainly.
Right.
Um, did you? Did, the reason why I ask this is that
Mm.
I also, I've what I appreciate about your career is that you've done many different things,
Oh, thank
and I've done the same similar over the years out of necessity or what have
you.
you. And I do work because it's the work and it pays, but I just don't get that enjoyment out of it as I did the creative stuff that I used to do. And
Right.
I'm always curious if you've felt the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there's been times where I was fortunate enough to only take on what I wanted to take on. And now I'm 62. I don't plan on retiring, but I'm going to hopefully make enough to be a little picky again. Um, but for me, the advertising stuff, it was kind of funny how I got into that. It was, well, we had an instructor at the Kubert School, John Belfi, who um, he was a he was a really interesting, lovable guy that he's just one of those salesmen, And I don't mean like annoying or pushy. And he's the one that, and of course, other instructors, artists, and writers at the school would also give you some ideas on how to do this commercially. But with um, even before I went to Kubert School, I used to take on some local advertising jobs. Some of that was mercy stuff, like, oh, my art teacher at high school knows this guy that needs posters for his
Hmm.
sporting event or something. But that kind of thing, I liked working for individual clients. I do a ton of commissions, so I'm still doing that. But as far as the real life work, like doing and some magazine work can be real. Like I actually did illustrations for um, orthopedic finance magazine or something. There's not going to
Sounds
be there's not going to be any fighting or Kirby crackle in that shit. You know, you know.
that sounds
Um,
fascinating.
um, you know what? It's funny how some things would just kind of come together because at the time when I was in the art department, that was when they were still on 387 Park Avenue South. And I just so happened to talk to a guy in the elevator one morning, and I knew that I believe it was Cigar Aficionado magazine, and these high end, it was like in the 90s, the whole cigar thing really blew up. And I just started talking to this guy, The next thing I know, me and my friend, my partner Kreger, are in a boardroom, like with all these executive guys talking about this advertising campaign. I mean, it was comic related. It was they had gotten the rights, or maybe it was public domain with like Punch and Judy, and they we did a whole cigar bar campaign on this thing, and that's where I really learned, like, you know what? Maybe you're going into these things. Maybe you're gonna try to pitch this stuff at a meeting, and you might not feel like you know what the hell you're doing. Well, prepare the best you can. You know, odds are they're not going to shoot you. They're just going to say, well, no, thank you. That's not what we're looking for. And that was, I think, with doing the advertising stuff, especially since I was kind of like a one person studio or agency, you really had to learn to, you got to bring that confidence to sell these people on stuff. And yeah, there was time. I remember I worked for the Financial Writers Association group of New York, and what it was all business. So while I was doing work for them each year, I used to joke with my contact, you know, you sons of bitches, you got me reading the Wall Street Journal and, you know, following the financial news, which ended up being a good thing. But
Hmm.
yes, a lot of the advertising stuff, just about anybody who's done all this stuff will tell you there are meetings and there are art directors or art buyers that you're just like, I am going to kill him and I will just go to prison and it will be fine because I needed to kill him, you know, like the changes. And, but another basic I would say is, you know, advertising is really tough these days because so many folks are like, oh, well, I can just crank out a logo for my business on my phone, you know.
Yeah.
But um, but that stuff a lot of times paid the bills when I was working on comics pitches, or maybe there wasn't that much at the time, you know.
That's that's interesting. Yeah, thank you for answering that. I
Oh
appreciate
yeah,
that.
and if you know if these observations are coming up shy, don't call
Absolutely
me out
not.
on it.
Oh no, 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 no.
Okay.
I absolutely not. I really appreciate that because
Mhm.
I just wanted to get someone else's take on it because
Yeah,
I've been there and it's frustrating,
yeah,
and you just got to roll with it. But feels like your life is getting sucked out of you
yeah,
because too many cooks in the kitchen and everybody's got
yeah.
to put their 2 cents in for whatever it's worth.
And
Probably very
some
little.
folks, they're more geared to where they can manage that stuff. They can wrestle with those aspects. Um, but you know, you try to hang in there. I've had a couple jobs where there was like I had one job where it was for a Carmen San Diego calendar, and it was very demanding. It was a tough license, but we had dealt with that before at Marvel, like with Paramount and other companies. And with this particular job, the art director and we just couldn't come to an agreement on the coloring. I had done all the black and white work for just about the whole cast, the whole calendar. Um, so I said, well, now we just have to negotiate, the black and white work, and please get someone else to do the color. Obviously, we're not on the same page with this. Um, I feel like if you just don't surprise them or ignore them, you can
Yeah.
work with most people, I think.
Oh yeah. How you speak to somebody and handle them is a big part of it. And if you don't know how
Yeah.
to read the room, then you're kind of out of luck. my opinion.
Right.
But
Right.
at any rate, so you did, as you mentioned earlier, uh, go back to the Kubert School, but as a teacher.
Yeah.
What was that like for you, being able to give back?
That, you know what? Some people, I loved it, and I do use that terminology. It felt good to give back. Um, I enjoy, well, how it played out was, I'd stayed in touch with Joe and some folks at the school, not as well as I probably should have right after graduation. But you go try different things, whatever. And I think Joe Kubert knew I was gonna get let go at Marvel before I did. He's one of those guys. He knew everything. And when he found out that I got they did away with that position, he like called me up and said, "Why don't you come teach a couple days?" And that was wonderful because I didn't know it at the time, but I needed to latch into something else. And I remember in high school taking a aptitude test, and it was like, "Oh, you're going to be an artist." I'm like, "Well, yeah, no shit. I've been drawing since I was in the womb. But you're also going to be a teacher." And I'm like, "I don't even like school. I was very lucky to have some wonderful teachers, but I'm like, you need to fix this test. But I. You know,
That's great.
yeah.
So, what do you have coming up that fans can look out for?
Okay, it's hype time, baby.
Let's do it.
The main thing, I don't know if you can see this old poster back here. I'm working on a
Absolutely.
strip called The Unknown. And what this is, and me and my buddy John Jay, the 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 production is a kid in a comic. And we're selling old school the funny pages like you used to get in the Sunday papers, the same kind of scale. It's got a nice retro vibe to it. And we've got some amazing people. We've got Glenn Whitmore. We've got Scott Hanna doing stuff. By all means, check it out. It is an all ages publication. There's humor, superheroes, horror. There's a strip called The Office Unicorn, which is hilarious. There's some fantasy stuff in here. My strip gets a little busy, but I'll see if I can kind of give you a peek at one of them.
Oh, wow.
Like I said, it's The Unknown, and it's about these three friends who are paranormal investigators. And this has been fun because I kind of started it last year when we started working on season one of A Kid in a Comic. And the challenge with this type of strip is, all right, you got three people that, are looking for witches and demons and cryptids. How the hell do you make this different from the gajillion other comics, books, movies, TV shows? I'm having a lot of fun with it. So, with the paper, if you go to the website, a kid in a comic, you can get mail-in orders. We've also instituted some other delivery processes. So what it is it's like the first season was 7 editions, and pretty much all the work. We've got a lot of adventure horror stuff that's continued, which is fun. You'll have your stories, and there's some laughs. There's puzzles. That we have interviews with celebrities. I'm really proud of it, but then again, I am very close to it because I'm one of the editors. But just do me a favor and go to the site, check it out.
Definitely.
We bring them to all the conventions. My next one, uh, coming up is going to be in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. It's the Phillipsburg Con. A bunch of us are going to be there. And I also want to plug Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah.
My friends have Isle of Comics, that's in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And my wife and I and some friends are going to meet there. We've been doing this for years, and I'll have some of the papers with me. I still, a lot of this stuff I've been doing is for the shows. This is like a
Very
new
nice.
Captain America villain print.
Very cool.
I did one of these villain grids for a friend, a client, and I said, well, how about if I do, some prints of that? You cool with that? If he didn't want it to be a print, I would have said, that's fine. That's your call. It's your art. But I've been doing a lot of these Flash, Captain America, Batman villains, of course, is a big draw. And I like it, like I said before, I've got a book that's halfway done. The first issue's done, which is Jersey Devil versus Bigfoot. And I've been picking at that and talking about it since I discovered Bigfoots, I think in the 70s. It hasn't been that long, but it's been a long time. So yeah, that's so right now, primarily horror and the occasional superhero and or caricature commission.
And we are back. So, what'd you guys think of that episode? I really enjoyed talking to Darren. He is a really cool guy. Has done some great work over his career. Worked in a lot of different types of media. And he's done some great work. He also is a horror fan, so I gotta love that, man. And if you guys didn't know, he's a fan of the Dollar Bin Bandits. We always talk to those people who we're fans of, and why we read comics and things that we're interested in. So it's pretty cool when you get to talk to people who are actually fans of your work. So I hope you guys really enjoyed listening to that. Also, coming up on the 20th of July is Hurricane in East Rockaway, New York. Go to facebook.com, search up Hurricane. You'll get all the deets there. They got some great guests coming on. I hope you guys check it out. Also, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And be sure to check us out later this week.